The marble floors of Thorn Manor gleamed under the afternoon sun. Cold and perfect. Just like everything else in Victoria Thorn's carefully constructed world. She had built her empire from nothing, a billion-dollar tech company that changed how the world communicated. But success, she'd learned, was a lonely pedestal. The higher you climbed, the thinner the air became. Until you couldn't remember what it felt like to simply breathe alongside another human being. Victoria's heels clicked against those pristine floors as she entered through the service entrance. Something she never did. Her flight from Singapore had landed 6 hours early. And for once, she'd dismissed her driver, craving a moment of anonymity. The house was supposed to be empty except for the evening staff. But as she moved through the corridors of her own home, this monument to her success that somehow felt more like a museum, she heard something that made her freeze. Crying. A child's muffled sobs coming from the east wing. Her heart hammered as she moved toward the sound, questions flooding her mind. No children lived here. No children ever visited. This sterile palace of glass and marble wasn't built for sticky fingers and laughter. She rounded the corner into the rarely used library. And that's when she saw him. Miguel, her night janitor. The quiet man who kept her world spotless while she slept. He was kneeling beside a small boy, maybe 7 years old, who was curled up in one of the leather reading chairs. Miguel's weathered hands were gentle as he tried to comfort the child. But his face was creased with worry. The boy's arm was bent at an unnatural angle. And even from where she stood, Victoria could see the swelling. Miguel's head snapped up as she entered. Terror flashed across his face, raw, primal fear that made Victoria's stomach clench. In 2 strides, he was in front of her. And before she could speak, his calloused hand covered her mouth. "Don't scream," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, Miss Thorne. Don't scream. I can explain." She froze, not from fear, but from the desperation in his eyes. These weren't the eyes of a threat. These were the eyes of a father watching his world collapse. Slowly, she reached up and moved his hand away. "I'm not going to scream, Miguel. But you need to tell me what's happening. Right now." Miguel's shoulders sagged, and for a moment, he looked like he might crumble entirely. "My son, Danny. I had no choice, Miss Thorne. No choice. My wife, she's in the hospital. Emergency surgery. My sister who watches him, she got called into work. I couldn't leave him alone. He's only 7. I know I broke the rules. I know I'll lose my job. But I had nowhere else to take him." Victoria looked past him at the boy, who was now watching her with enormous brown eyes filled with pain and fear. "His arm," she said quietly. "We were at the park before my shift. He fell from the monkey bars. I thought it was just bruised, but..." Miguel's voice cracked. "It's broken. I know it's broken. But the hospital bills for my wife, we don't have insurance anymore. I lost it when I had to take part-time to care for my mother before she passed. I was going to take him to the emergency room after my shift. Try to work out a payment plan, but he got worse. The pain got worse, and You brought him here because this was the only safe place you could think of." Victoria finished, something sharp and painful twisting in her chest. Miguel nodded, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll leave right now. I'll take him to the hospital. Just please, don't call the police. I was never going to hurt anything. I would never." "Stop," Victoria said, her voice firmer now. She pulled out her phone, and Miguel flinched. But instead of calling security, she dialed her personal physician. "Dr. Matthews. Victoria Thorne. I need you at my home immediately. A child with what appears to be a broken arm. No, don't call an ambulance. I need discretion. 20 minutes. Make it 10. She ended the call and looked at Miguel, who was staring at her as if she'd grown a second head. "Sit down before you fall down," she told him, then walked past him to the boy. Danny pressed himself back into the chair as she approached, clutching his injured arm. Victoria realized she had no idea how to talk to a child. She negotiated with corporate titans, gave TED Talks to thousands. But this little boy with his tear-stained face and frightened eyes was completely outside her expertise. She lowered herself to his level, her designer suit crinkling against the floor. "Hi, Danny. I'm Victoria. This is my house. Are you going to send my dad to jail?" His voice was so small, so scared. The question hit her like a physical blow. "No, sweetheart. Nobody's going to jail. But your arm really hurts, doesn't it?" He nodded, new tears spilling over. "I have a doctor coming. A really good one. He's going to fix your arm and make the hurt go away. Is that okay?" Danny glanced at his father, who nodded encouragement. "Okay," the boy whispered. Dr. Matthews arrived in 8 minutes. His decades of service to the Thorne family evident in his discretion and efficiency. While he examined Danny, Victoria pulled Miguel aside. "How long?" she asked. Miguel looked confused. "How long what, Miss Thorne? How long have you been working multiple jobs? How long has your wife been sick? How long have you been drowning, Miguel? While cleaning my floors and pretending everything was fine." His jaw worked, but no sound came out. "You've worked for me for 3 years, Victoria continued, her voice softening. 3 years, and I never asked how you were. Never asked if you needed anything. I never even learned your son's name until today. That's not your job, Miss Thorne. You pay me well. I'm grateful. Grateful." The word tasted bitter. "You're working yourself to death. Your wife is having emergency surgery. And you were going to take your child to the ER. With a broken arm and no way to pay for it. That's not gratitude, Miguel. That's survival. There's a difference." Dr. Matthews interrupted them. "It's a clean break. Needs to be set and casted. I can do it here, but he'll need proper aftercare and follow-up X-rays." "Whatever he needs," Victoria said immediately. "Send the bills to me. All of them." "Miss Thorne, I can't," Miguel started. "You can, and you will." She turned to face him fully. "Your wife. What hospital?" "St. Catherine's." "But." Victoria was already dialing again. Within minutes. She'd spoken to the hospital administrator, an old college friend, who owed her several favors, and ensured that all of Miguel's wife's medical bills would be covered by the Thorne Foundation, a charitable entity she'd established years ago but barely paid attention to. As Dr. Matthews worked on Danny's arm, using a mild sedative to help with the pain, Victoria found herself sitting on the floor next to Miguel, both of them watching the doctor work. "Why?" Miguel asked finally. "Why are you doing this?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring at the books that lined the walls, thousands of volumes she'd never read, purchased by an interior designer to fill space in a house that had never felt like a home. "I built something," she said slowly. "Something impressive. Something the world told me mattered. I have a house with 23 rooms and I sleep in one of them. I have art worth millions that I walk past without seeing. I have everything, Miguel. And yet I can't remember the last time I did something that actually mattered." She looked at him. This man whose calloused hands told the story of a life spent in labor, whose eyes held more depth and humanity than most of the executives she worked with. "You risked everything today to protect your son. You brought him to the one place you knew he'd be safe, even though you knew it could cost you your job. That's love, Miguel. That's what actually matters. And I've been so busy being successful that I forgot what it looked like." Danny stirred as Dr. Matthews finished the cast, his eyes drooping from the sedative. "Dad," he murmured. "I'm here, Mijo. I'm right here." Victoria stood, brushing off her suit. "Dr. Matthews, thank you. Please ensure Miguel has all the prescriptions and care instructions." Of course, Miss Thorne. She turned to Miguel. Starting tomorrow, you're on full-time with benefits. Full medical coverage for your entire family. And I want you to hire 2 more people for the night shift. You shouldn't be doing this alone. Miss Thorne, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Just take care of your family. She paused. Something unfamiliar tightening in her throat. And Miguel. Thank you. He looked confused. For what? For reminding me what home is supposed to feel like. Over the next few weeks, something shifted in the cold marble halls of Thorne Manor. Victoria found herself coming home earlier. Not to an empty house, but to ask Miguel about his wife's recovery. To check on Danny's arm. To simply talk to someone who saw her as human rather than a title or a bank account. She discovered that Miguel's wife, Rosa, had been a teacher before her illness. That Danny loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. That Miguel had once dreamed of opening a small restaurant, but life had taken him in a different direction. And slowly, Victoria began to understand the difference between success and significance. She restructured the Thorne Foundation, turning it from a tax write-off into an active force for good. Focusing on medical debt relief and educational opportunities for working families. She started a program at her company providing full healthcare coverage and emergency family funds for all employees, even part-time ones. But more than that, she started seeing people. Really seeing them. The security guard who worked double shifts to support his aging parents. The administrative assistant juggling online classes with her job. The countless faces she'd walked past for years without really noticing. 6 months later, on a warm evening, Victoria walked through her house to find it transformed. Miguel had asked if his family could use the kitchen to prepare a traditional meal as thanks. The clinical, perfect space was now filled with the sounds of laughter. The smell of home-cooked food. And the warmth of people who cared for each other. Danny ran up to her, his cast long gone, and handed her a drawing. I made this for you. It was a picture of a woman with a crown, holding hands with 2 other figures. At the top, in shaky letters, he'd written, Miss Victoria, our hero. Victoria felt something break open in her chest, a wall she'd built so high and so strong that she'd forgotten it was there. Tears blurred her vision as she knelt down and hugged this little boy who'd changed her life by simply being in it. Thank you, Danny, she whispered. But you've got it backwards. You saved me. That night, as she sat around her dining room table for the first time since moving in, sharing a meal with Miguel's family and several other staff members she'd invited to join them, Victoria understood a truth she'd spent her whole life running from. The real measure of wealth had nothing to do with the numbers in her bank account. It was here, in this moment. In the sound of shared laughter and the warmth of human connection. She'd built an empire alone. But she was learning, finally, how to build a life together. And that made all the difference.